Now. Okay. Hi, this is CIT260. This is our term project for our team presentation for the object-oriented programming. This is Rob Nebeker and Irina presenting this presentation today. We're going to go ahead and start by explaining the 7 steps of the design and develop of a method. The first step is to clearly define the problem. This is when we get all the team players who will be helping in solving this problem, getting them together and try to define exactly what the problem is, and so we can clearly define it and then address how we're going to fix this.
And then we create a test matrix. Test matrix can be like a word table, and we can create multiple columns that would represent a valid value, invalid values, and boundary values. And a number of rows will depend on how many parameters we're going to work with to solve our problem. And in this test matrix, we are creating possible values to start with, and what values we're going to have after doing some mathematical calculations, if necessary.
Yes, and then after that, we'll be doing the outline, the solution. And this is where we're going to be kind of explaining exactly what we're trying to accomplish. And then maybe, as you can see on the example here, which is clearly define the problem, the method is to solve, and it goes on to explain a little bit about the problem that we're tackling. And then it has to be, and then we throw together some pseudocode, as you can see below, where we try to come up with an idea of how we're going to address this problem with some kind of a practice code to begin with.
And then we're going to test the algorithm. For that, we can write some unit tests to make sure that the program that we're building works correctly and our logic is also correct.
Yes, and then after that, we're going to translate the algorithm to code. And this is where we take that pseudocode and then the test that we've done, confirming it's working, and then we're going to put that into actual code. So as you can see on the right, we have an example of that where we have the if statement. So now that we got the code and it looks like it's working right, we're going to spell it out with the if and else if necessary, and then adding integers and equations that we need to as Java code to be able to accomplish this problem.
After that, we're going to run some tests that we created with actual code and make sure that our program works.
And then the last step will be to deploy the changes to the source code. So once we've confirmed everything is working as expected and there's no further issues at this point, we will then deploy this code to the rest of our source code so we can continue on to the next phases of our development. So our next slide here is about the selection statements in Java. The selection statement, there are 3 types of selection statements. The if statement is either performs or selects an action if a condition is true, or skips it if the condition is false. As you can see here, we got an example of that. So it will then perform the if statement, and if it is true, then it will fill the rest of that line and then return the output on that. If it's false and it does not fulfill that, it will go down to the next if statement and perform that. But if it's false again, they will then go down to the else, which is the final one for it being false, and then return the value as specified.
The third type of selection statements is a switch statement. The switch statement performs one of many different actions, depending on the value of an expression. In our game, we're displaying, for example, a menu of actions a user can perform, like view game goals, view city location, or view map. And depending on which option a user selects, a value passed to a switch statement and a certain method is executed. Next, I would like to talk about unit tests. And the code that you see on this slide is a method that I wrote for plant crops method in a control layer. And this is a unit test. What it does, first thing, it prints out plant crops test case 1, so we know which test is performing. And then we're creating an instance of a crop data object, and we call it crop data. Next, we are assigning a value of 200 to a set acres owned method from a crop data object, and a 600 value to set wheat in store from a crop data object. Next, we're creating an instance of a crop control, and we actually call it instance. Next, we are declaring variables. Acres to plant equals 100. And based on that, we're expecting to get a result of 550. And then we are declaring a variable result and assigning it to a instance object and a plant crops method that passes 2 parameters, acres to plant and a crop data method.
And the next one here is another test unit for the set authoring method. This is one that I helped put together. And then this one it goes through the test that we went through to confirm that it's working correctly. So the first line is that the system output. This one displays the set offering test 2. This is so we can differentiate it from other tests that we might be performing. And then we got the object of crop data with the crop data with the new crop data, as well as a set wheat in store with the value of 600. And then we got the crop control instance with the new crop control. We also put other values in there in order to test this particular unit. So we have the integer, the percent equals 10, and also the wheat in store equals 600. So with these values and then the ones that we have set above in the set wheat in store, we're able to do a proper calculation and expect a result of 60. So we can try to determine whether or not it's functioning properly or not. And then ultimately, then it will display this result as well as use this result back into the crop control set offering with the percent and crop data. And our next one we have is concepts of scope and lifespan of a variable. Now the concept of the variable is defined within the block of that method. So like as we have here as an example, we got the public int hash code in there, and then we have the block below that with the code defined there. Now all that is defined in there, so that shows you what the scope is for that particular method, and it's good for that method unless it is considered private or public. Now what that means is that the public makes it readily available outside of that method, so other methods or functions are able to pull that and use that data. But when it's private, then it has a different lifespan. So if you look on the example on the right side, we have the public class location implements the serializable. So we have private string description and private string symbol. Now these are private strings, which means that these are only available within this public class and are not available anywhere else. So that means that the lifespan of this variable it starts within this class and then ends within this class, and it's not readily available outside of that. Where on the other side, the lifespan of the variable is public, and then therefore it continues on even outside of that, wherever it's being put into memory.
Next thing that I would like to talk about is the passing of parameters by value and by reference. So here's an example of a method called plant crops that passes 2 parameters. One is an integer acres to plant and an object of crop data. So all primitives are passed by value, and objects passed by reference. What it means is that passing a parameter by value means that once we declare the variable and assign a certain value to it, we can reference that name of a variable, and that way we can pass a certain value. But when we passing a parameter as an object, we are able to access that object and all multiple variables and methods inside of that object by reference. For example, we can see here we're referencing crop data to get acres owned, and we do it by crop data.getAcersOwned method. And this is all possible by passing a parameter by reference.
Well, thank you for watching. This is once again, this is our class presentation for CIT260. We thank you for those who kept through this and watched this presentation. Thank you.